Hello, and welcome to the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast with Astrologer Shelley Overton.
Okay, fifth time is the charm. Welcome back. It's Shelley. I recorded this yesterday just before a void of course moon, hoping I could get it in, but alas, planets had the final say, and it only recorded up until the void of course moon, and then my camera shut off. So now I'm going to re-record everything I did yesterday. So Taurus rising for the inauguration. So this is interesting because they chose to do an early inauguration ceremony, or at least swearing in. Joe Biden isn't technically the president until noon, the day of the inauguration. And part of that is because all the codes and the emergency box goes with Trump until noon, and then it switches over to a new box that Biden has so that he has access to any nuclear codes that he needs for an emergency. So that is technically the start, but being sworn in is the time when Joe Biden gets on board with his job. So when Joe Biden was sworn in, we had 9 degrees of Taurus on the horizon in Washington, D.C. at 11:48 a.m. on January 20th, 2021. So just above the horizon, that means right before that event took place, Uranus came up above the horizon, and at the very same degree was Mars. They are within 5 minutes of astrological time at the horizon, and just above them is a 28-degree moon in Aries. That is a really interesting, significant stellium. The moon at last degrees, like I said last week, is in the same degree or within a degree. I believe it was 29, but it might have been 28. I'll have to look again, of the insurrection. So the moon is the culmination of that energy. So baked into that vow is the energy that caused the insurrection to bubble forth, so to speak. Part of that is a square to Pluto at 24 degrees. So we have a certain amount of friction already in that inaugural swearing in. And so that means obviously as a president, he's going to have to address the heart of the people who were rising up and the other people who kind of are in the background, but not necessarily as aggravated to the point of going and taking the Capitol. But definitely the people who are upset at what's going on, that is going to be something that ultimately Biden in his presidency will have to address. Mars just moved past this degree, and now he is at 6 degrees conjunct Uranus. Interestingly, the culmination of a story, or the ultimate outcome of a story, is the energy of the moon at that degree of the insurrection in his chart for the swearing in, means that he is going to have to address that as a storyline within his presidency. And of course, the impeachment will be part of addressing that. But the moon in horary astrology is about the manifestation of the energy. Like, how does it ultimately, what's the ultimate outcome? So when I look at the moon, and I have to look at it that way, that's just how I read astrology. I see it as a manifest or a culmination of a storyline. And so that is really, his swearing in is part of the culmination of the storyline. It is the expression of the energy of the moment. And it has to be said that even though that is the degree of the insurrection of radical right activists and insurrectionists, it is also an agitation of people who are all part of the country, and they have different points of view. So that is a degree of shift and change that the country will have to go through. The moon representing house, home, homeland, family, and the nurturing of the entity. So we have that energy opposing, or not opposing, but energetically opposing, but technically squaring to Pluto, which is the psychology and the inner makeup of our thought processes and the depth of emotion that we have, the visceral processing and passion that we put behind something, the true ultimate value we view that entity. And in this case, Pluto is at the midheaven, which means it's at the top of the chart, and it is the energy assigned to fame and career, life purpose. So there is a structural authority energy around Pluto at this point, given that his ruling sign currently, he's in the sign of Capricorn, the ruling sign, or excuse me, ruling planet of Capricorn is Saturn. And so that is the energy of systems, authority figures, hierarchy, and Pluto is the planet, of course, of change. So the introductory energy for the career, for the life purpose, midheaven, the people, the collective consciousness, fame point is Pluto. It's digging deep, it's major change, it is a warring aspect, but also a transformative energy in the sky. So the beginning of his presidency is, in the public eye, going to be rife with that force that transforms. And because Moon is, again, where it was at with the Mars energy from January 6th, it's going to be a storyline. Okay, Sun at 0 degrees 51 minutes of Aquarius, leading into the next energy coming into the public eye, the public awareness of what this presidency will be. And so that's the identity, the ego, the id of the president and his presidency, his administration. And in Aquarius, it is bringing together of the people. Lots of chills. I had so many chills. I really wish the last recording had worked, because it was really good, really in tune, and anyway, can't relive the past. Well, I guess you can. That's what I'm doing. Reliving the past. Anyway, Saturn at 3 degrees, just 3 degrees past the Sun. So Sun, Saturn, Pluto in Capricorn, very much change, transformative structure, collectivism, really trying to get inroads built with other people, which I think was apparent through the inaugural speech. Unusual and eclectic. It will be a presidency that will be probably a bit of a roller coaster, but also bringing in people from many different walks of life. It'll have environmentalism in it. I mean, all these things are issues that Biden has talked about in his campaign, in his speech, but it's also bearing out in his chart, in the chart of that event. So Saturn on Sun, he's very strongly associating who he is with the power of the presidency and the gravitas of that job. And then we have Jupiter at 7 degrees, a little ways past, looking for really a freedom energy, but also learning, education, not spending too much time worrying about how the decision was made, but moving on to the next problem. Very quick energy with this stellium of planets. Aquarius is a fast-thinking sign. So Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, all in Aquarius. We're really going to be thinking about how we can solve these. And Pluto is a problem solver. So Pluto will be the one really guiding that finishing off of an old story around hierarchy, and then Sun bringing us into the new energy of really listening to what people have to say. And I think that's going to be a humongous, huge hallmark of this presidency. And then Mercury in Aquarius, again, listening, thinking, ideas. What do we got? What do we have? What do we have? And that's the energy he's putting into it mentally. Tremendous amount of mental energy put into systems and structures and realigning. I think that's going to be really what you see is what you get with what we have had coming into this presidency. Then we have Neptune in sextile to Venus. This, I believe, is truly the energy of Kamala Harris, because woman is female. Venus energy in Capricorn. She is and that can also be Jill Biden. Jill, not Joe, because she is the educator in this scenario, and she's in there learning and growing and educating, but then so is Kamala Harris. She is going to be the groundedness to this presidency, and she will really bring a lot of behind the scenes talking to the people and learning about what has to happen in a structural sense to that organization. And then her planet of Venus is in positive sextile to Neptune in the house of networking and the people associated with the support network. And also this can also be diplomacy. So I do see Kamala Harris as being a tremendous diplomat in this presidency, while really bringing in the intuitive side, the feminine receptive side to the story. And it's interesting because how these planets are in the chart, you have the stellium, and then you have on either side Venus and Neptune surrounding that intellectual side that Joe Biden really exhibits. And then she's behind, kind of cupping it and saying, yeah, I'm here, I've got your back, I'm going to be on either side of you, working with people and working with the House and the Senate, and the structures of the other departments of government. And then we have down there in the side just above the horizon, things are going on behind the scenes. So all of the Aquarian planets are answering to Uranus, because Aquarius is the overarching sign that they're in. And then so they're looking to Uranus down there in Taurus. Taurus looks back to Venus in Capricorn, who looks to Saturn, and it's kind of like this ping pong going around between Venus and Saturn, answering to Venus and Capricorn, answering to Saturn, Saturn in Aquarius, answering to Uranus, Uranus and Taurus answering to Venus. So there's a triad going on. And so there will be a lot of communication between Joe Biden, Saturn, Venus, Kamala Harris, and unusual and interesting new creative methods used, and the process, which is Taurus. Taurus is very much about plotting through the process. So we will see, this triad of energy going on with the presidency. Mars, still the energy of aggression, assertiveness, also looking for new and forward-thinking energy. So it's going to be a real strong collective push towards getting solutions and inclusion, which is what Uranus and Aquarius both want to do, is inclusion. So the drive of the presidency is in the 12th house. There's a subconscious push to bring ideas to materiality. And the moon in Aries, it's the culmination of the story around men. And then, of course, just after that, within a couple hours, moon went into Taurus, which shifted the energy. So I do think that's going to be a significant, significant indicator of something occurring in the presidency. Throughout the course of the presidency, there will be a shift of heart of some sort, and a shift within the country towards a more positive explanation or expression of finances, of economy, of connectedness to others, but also from male to female. So that is a strong potential. There will be a shift of power within that presidency at some point. And it doesn't necessarily mean Kamala is going to take the reins completely, but there could be a shift to where her power really is much more grounded and promotive of what the agenda is of the administration. So, but it could also mean a shift of hands of power. And it's only 2 hours away, which means fairly early in timeline. So we're going to sit back and see what happens. And This North and South Node are in Gemini Sagittarius in the house of value and values to others. So it's about learning what people want, learning. Honestly, there is that energy of learning what other people or in the collective what they want, what they have from the past, but then transmuting it and expressing it out and really trying to gain inroads through communication and understanding, which is the North Node in Gemini. So in the house of couples and romance, creativity, well, it's not romance, it's actually couples, money, and love, Taurus, beauty. There is an aesthetic of this presidency that was seen during the inauguration, of course, with the fashion and the music and the fireworks. There's just a certain sense of joy, which I think Jupiter in Aquarius really speaks to, but also North Node in the second house of Taurus, naturally, but in the sign of Gemini, really, communicate a sense of happiness, which Gemini really can bring to the story. Okay, we're going to move on to, I'm going to just look real quick at the inaugural moment that he technically becomes president. And it's very similar. The only difference is moon's at 29 degrees. The midheaven is the sun in Aquarius, which, remember, Pluto was right inside the 10th house with the technical swearing in, or not technical, with the swearing in at the inauguration, but then the sun shifted to the midheaven at noon. So that's a really interesting astrological event because they were different times and they were only 8 minutes apart, but the difference in what happened in the charts was that this transformative energy ruled the moment when he was sworn in, and when he technically became president, it shifted to the ego and the identity, which is really what happened during that event. Chills when I said that. So the noon chart has sun at the midheaven, 4 degrees, it's a 26 degree Capricorn midheaven. The sun is at 0, Saturn at 3, Jupiter at 7, Mercury at 18. And all of those energies do square Moon and Mars. So there's probably going to be a slowing down of what can be accomplished because there is a subliminal resistance through, and it isn't ego. The ego is wanting to change. It is the heart hasn't gotten on board with the head and the ego. And so there's going to be a slowing down behind the scenes. So what appears to be a very fast out of the gate energy can be really bogged down behind the scenes with more of the action that has to be taken. And really what has to happen is Mars coming up on Uranus is the action has to focus on getting the collective on board and getting the heart to follow the mind. So that's really kind of the ongoing, get the heart to want to do what the mind sees has to be done. And that will be very key to the whole of the presidency. Again, Moon will shift ultimately and Mars will move past Uranus. And what that means is if Mars can't get the collective to agree, Mars is going to push it through anyway. Because once he's past Uranus, which was right after, it's only 5 minutes of time, and I honestly, let me see, where did it go? Right here. So Mars joined Uranus at 3:38, which is just about 4 hours after. And so right after that, Mars is on his own. So 4 hours in Taurus is weeks and months. Potentially years, but weeks is probably what I would say. So about 4 weeks. If it doesn't get done, it's going to be pushed through anyway. And that's the energy pretty much after about 4 weeks, 4 weeks to 4 months. So the first half of the year may be a real cooperative energy. And then after that, if it's not that cooperative, it's just going to get pushed on. Okay, so enough of inauguration. I just wanted to touch real quick on the Articles of Impeachment because the Articles of Impeachment we haven't gotten them to the Senate yet, but I hear in the news that they're going just before 7 o'clock at night on Monday, January 25th, Washington, D.C., and that means we have a 26 degree Leo rising. The moon is at 2 degrees of Cancer. So if they in fact do it after the moon moves into Cancer, now remember there's a lot of Mason astrological energy in DC, and so I know that astrologers have been used in politics in DC since the beginning, but I wonder how on board some of these people really are. And like Nancy Pelosi is the one making the decision. Of course, she probably consults with a bevy of people, including Chuck Schumer. And so, you know, did they decide to present them at a specific time? It's interesting because the moon, if they do present the articles just before 7, the moon moves into Cancer, and let me just look at what time that is, at 1:52 p.m. on Monday. So obviously if it's just before 7 at night, they are waiting until after the moon enters. I don't know if they're waiting for other things astrologically, if maybe they don't even see what's going on. But 21 degree Venus in Capricorn, Pluto at 25 degrees. There's a direct opposition between Saturn and Sun, and not technical. It's not the exact degree, but it's pretty, there is an inconjunct, meaning 150 degree aspect between the moon and Sun and moon and Saturn at the time of 6:58 p.m. on Monday, which is a difficult energy. That's, I would say, the most difficult energy in the zodiac. So there's going to be pushback. I kind of wish, well, it is what it is. You know, if it were in degrees of Gemini, nothing would come from it. But if it's early degrees of moon in Cancer, definitely something will come from it, but not without a huge fight. And the sun is only 2 degrees away from a Jupiter conjunction, which means that there will be some type of energy that is in agreement and then moves on. So I think that it will be fairly fast. 2 degrees moon, 2 degrees till the sun joins up with Jupiter. And so it's going to be, and they're both in mutable signs. So, wait a minute, fixed signs, pardon me. And so they're going to be really digging their heels in with their point of view, obviously. And Venus coming up on Pluto is the major shift around ideas and structure and authority. So Venus will have a say in this, and Venus is Kamala Harris, and of course she's the deciding vote for the Senate. So she's going to have a strong influence in this shift. And to get to Pluto in this chart, she has to cross the cusp from the 5th into the 6th house, going from being polite and sweet and connected. You know, the Leo side wants to, let's all have a communication and relationship here, but she's going to have to go into the house of service and work and get it done to make this happen. And then the moon, of course, as the moon moves along, it's going to be a direct opposition to the sun. It's going to be in direct opposition to Jupiter. So there is a voice that has to be heard by the people, but then the collective has to agree. I think it will, with the sun joining Jupiter. And then I do think more information will come out after this happens, and it's going to be frustrating for sure with a square, still the same square of the inauguration is going on with Mars and Uranus to all these Aquarian planets. So yeah, it's an interesting chart. There is a sextile between Mars and the moon. And so I do believe that the Mars energy past Uranus at that point it's at 9 degrees Taurus, is going to be in cooperation with the moon, and it will have a say in what happens. I think chances are it's going to be like you agree or we're going to do it anyway kind of energy. But of course we do have to have an agreement, or the trial doesn't get culminated in, you know, a satisfying end, at least for part of the people in the Senate. All right, enough of that. Let's move on to something else. How about what's going on now? Okay, so what's going on now is we have Taurus at the horizon. This is for Saturday, January 23rd at 12:24 p.m. Taurus rising and Mars, Uranus. This is very similar to what happened with the inauguration as far as setup, because it's done roughly the same time of day. Okay, so Taurus on the horizon, we've got Moon in Gemini, so this weekend's going to be pretty nice with some social aspects, trying to all the Aquarian energy. We've got Neptune still in Pisces, and as the Moon continues to move forward, we're going to have a square to Pisces, so there is some energy around emotional release. And actually what I see and I feel is that the Moon squaring Neptune will join with the North Node, and there will be a watershed moment of emotional release at that point. The Moon wanting to get on with the thought process, the logic of the event, of the time, or whatever it is that we're going through. It also is related to siblings, and then the square between Neptune and the Moon is really deeply emotional. And I will tell you, I'm thinking a lot about my sister right now. That is still really a family event, and I'm still processing the loss of my brother-in-law, and so it's an emotional time, and I think today will be pretty emotional for that energy. You know, that there's a lot of loss. We're still dealing in the pandemic with hundreds of thousands of people gone, which is more than World War II, which is phenomenally difficult to understand. So if you just put it into that perspective, we've lost more people as a community than a world war on two different fronts. I mean, how is that even a thing when we have understanding of science and technology and health matters? It just doesn't make any sense. But yet we all know what we've been through to get here, and hopefully we'll right the course of this collective collective ship going through the waters. We have Venus at 18, and quite honestly, this is almost the exact same chart as the inauguration with the exception of the Moon. So the Moon at trine to the Sun, literally just finished trine. It's at 4 degrees right now. The Sun's at 3 degrees Aquarius, and it is kind of a mom and pop energy, the Moon being mom and Sun being dad. And then Saturn, so Sun Saturn, this is a strong energy around a detachment, pulling back of emotional energy from a father source, and also from our sense of self. How are we connected to dad? What is going on with our relationship with our father? Saturn at 4 degrees, which is an exact trine at the moment of this podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast, whenever you're listening to it, this energy is resonating to you, and it is a nurturing energy, but nurturing through words. So knowing the right thing to say and connecting on a very profound level. Saturn, it's the systems, it's knowing in an intuitive way through Aquarian energy, through understanding and channeling, it just comes to you. And then Gemini's the words, and Aquarius is multiple means of understanding how to go about something, neighbors, siblings, small pets, any solutions needed to be found from that front. We have them. We have the tools, basically the tools in the shed to get through this. Aquarius can be mental health. It can be medicine. It can be the science of understanding things. And so we are entering this real strong Aquarian shift of understanding and intellect that is coming in, especially Mercury at 22 degrees of Aquarius, just past that exact trine to the North Node and a sextile to the South Node. So the North Node answers to Mercury. We're really exploring many different routes to an answer or even ideas and events that are going to happen towards people. Mercury represents a person who is really analytical, but also scientific, and actually I want to say a little bit bubbly and has a good sense of humor. Aquarius is a wonderful sign for positive, higher understanding of the collective consciousness and really bringing groups together. This is a social aspect where we all work together. So wherever Aquarius falls in your chart personally, that's where you will build a community. And yeah, we're really looking to find the commonalities, but also the solutions. And Pluto, I will say this because this is really kind of something I've been thinking about a lot in the last few days, is where Pluto is. We've just had Saturn and Jupiter move out of Capricorn, and now Pluto is in the last degrees. It will last a couple of years. And so now we've still got this deep psychological, emotional, visceral wanting things to stay the same. And it is a death of that aspect of the old system, the old structures, but we're still kind of, our one foot's still planted in that old energy. So over the next 2 years, we're really trying to get our psychology on board with where we're heading as a collective. And so there is still going to be going over old ideas and old traditions and trying to understand how we can integrate a new way into that. And I think in the future, when Pluto actually does move into Aquarius, before he goes retrograde back into Capricorn, the first initiating energy of his understanding of the Aquarian energy, when that happens, there's going to be a tremendous sense of a death of some sort, because that's what Pluto rules. And so I would say the final movement of the collective towards a new identity, at least in this country of America, and probably also strongly in England, because Pluto in Capricorn is the energy that America broke away from England, so they are on the other end of it. There's going to be breaking free, so to speak, of parts of England. I would say that there's a movement either of the old way of thinking of colonialism and structure that England also has to go through, with the new way of bringing in everybody. And I know I watch a lot of YouTubers from England, and I know that there is that kind of undercurrent of how do we all get along? How are we going to be in this world together when we have radically different views? I think that when Pluto moves into Aquarius, that radically different view that we have experienced for the last decade building in our countries is going to settle in, and we are going to make psychological inroads into truly understanding why we need to be a collective and not individuals, and not broken apart. So anyway, that's the updated version of the podcast. Pretty sure it recorded this time. Very happy about that. And I guess I have a lot of editing to do. But have a good week. We're going to have the moon going through Cancer and Virgo. I think by next week it'll be in Libra. When I talk to you next week, late Libra and early Scorpio. We do have a full moon coming up in Leo, and the full moon, let me see, Thursday of next week. And so the full moon is right around the time just after a Venus conjunct Pluto. So that can be an energy of transformation around a woman, and definitely there will be a transition coming in, I think, with someone who is, I want to say, an institution in our society. We will see probably a transition of at least one female celebrity or person who is well known in the collective. And then the full moon happens at 2:16 p.m. Eastern and 11:16 a.m. Pacific. And so that's going to revolve around me and you understanding each other and relating, which is the energy of the moon. And then Sun in Aquarius wants to have a certain amount of detachment so the identity can bloom. So look for those storylines in your life. Leo is the sign of creativity. It's also expansion of leadership and connectedness to children. So there will be a pulling apart, I would say, of parents and children. It's still just the early part of the year, but also we're seeing children going away to college, and there's probably going to be a moment where parents and children are really having to understand the growth involved with separation. And I know that story is definitely playing out in my life. So we'll see that on the full moon. It is a culmination energy, meaning things finish up in this storyline. So it is something that helps us move on from the story around children, romances. If it is a breaking up of a relationship, there is independence to be gained from that. And then the moon squares Mars, so there will probably be some type of tiff. Also, we have the moon opposing Jupiter just after the full moon. So it is very much a transitionary shift. And then the sun, of course, being opposite the moon, and Jupiter opposite the moon means the sun joins up with Jupiter at 8:40 p.m. on Thursday, the 28th. So Sun-Jupiter conjunction is, we need to have our freedom. And that's very clearly what we're going to be focusing on, that there's a strong disconnect between us and some relationship within our lives, whether it's parent-child or remote emotional romantic relationship. We're going to have that separation feeling from this full moon. So I want to encourage you to do things that are self-care and connect with those friends, which is the Aquarian energy that the Sun and Jupiter will be in. And it's also education. So there may be an educational aspect to this, even going away to college or having to do something that takes you away from a loved one. Anyway, definitely take care of yourself over the course of the coming week. That is really the big day out of all the information I have to give you. We do have a Mercury Retrograde coming in next Saturday, so I do anticipate the podcast is going to be frustrating, unless I get to it Friday, which I probably will, because then I won't have as much stress, or maybe even Thursday on the full moon. Okay, so I will be here for you next week, and I hope you take good care of yourself, because that's truly what it's about right now. Take good mental care of yourself and do what you need to enhance your own positive emotional life. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you for being with me, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
You have been listening to the AstroEnergy Astrology Show. If you would like to get a private reading with Shelley, please contact her through angeliczodiac.com or at so@angeliczodiac.com. You can arrange a reading through the Angelic Zodiac page at facebook.com as well. Check out Angelic Zodiac on Instagram for up-to-date information on events, discounts, blogs and planetary transits at Angelic Zodiac 1 on Instagram. If you would like to see Shelley's art, ShelleyOverton.com, or for astrology art, go to astroart.net. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Other music will be credited within the show. Advice given in the program is intended for entertainment purposes only. Join us here next week for more of the AstroEnergy Astrology Show podcast. You can find us on iTunes and Google Play, and where podcasts are accessed.